Hi, I'm Jamie Mayo with Washtenaw Intermediate School District and Tinkered Toy Box. I'm going to show you how to tinker a dice roller today. So we have this toy that I've taken it out of the package. It has a lid. We don't need to do anything with that, so I'm just going to set that aside. And inside there are 5 dice. And there's a small little button on the side here. When I push and hold that button, it rolls the dice. So let me show you. When I let go, it stops, and then you can see what the results are of the dice that have been rolled. We can also use this with, this globe comes off. It's kind of tricky. There we go. So you can take this off and put anything in there that you want. You could use some bigger, different dice could be in there. Or here's a real big dice too. Or even here's one that has 12 sides. So we have some more numbers. So if teachers want to use this to do math, they could have the kids roll the dice 3 times and add those numbers together. Here's a special die that goes with a Lego game. So you can roll that die in there. That works. Or here's another special game that has special dice. So students can play whatever game they typically would play using the dice that come with the game. Or here's some different colored beads. You can throw those in there. Put the lid on. And for some students, that auditory sound of those beads moving around in there would be really soothing. And it's also bright and colorful and pretty, so you can have a little bit of an art experience with it as well. So there's lots of different stuff you can do to make noise or play games with this toy. So we're going to modify it so that, get rid of these. When I push a big button, our students will be able to activate it and roll the dice in the toy. So let me see, I'm taking the dome off. I'm going to set that aside. We won't need that again till the end. And I'm going to take the batteries out. You want to make sure that the first thing you do is stick the batteries in and test it, make sure it works. Because if the toy doesn't work, we can still return it to the store and get our money back and buy a toy that does work. So make sure your first step is always to stick the batteries in, test it, make sure that it works the way that it's supposed to work before we do any modifications at all. So I've got the batteries out now. And I'm going to take, there are 3 screws down here. I'm going to take those 3 screws out. Oops, see if I get it. I like to keep a little bowl next to where I'm working so I can throw all the screws and all the little parts in there and make sure that they don't get lost. Then I'm going to pull this bottom off. Actually, take that battery case off so I can get my finger in there and pull this off. There's going to be wires under here, so make sure you don't pull too hard. There we go. When I open that up, there are 2 wires that go to the battery canister. And there's a motor in the middle, and there's a switch off to the side. We're going to take the 2 wires that go from the switch, and we're going to attach those to our jack that's going to go in the side of the toy. And then we'll also take 2 more wires from the jack back to the switch and the motor. I'm sorry, the battery and the motor. So that this switch jack is interrupting the switch. It's wired across the switch that's already there. So you'll be able to either press the big button that the student has or press this little button that we've always pressed on the toy to make it work. So it'll have 2 different ways that it can work. So this switch jack will be drilling a hole in the side and putting the switch jack through there. So the first thing we have to do is figure out where we're gonna, oh no, I'm not gonna cut the wires. I'm gonna melt them off of their current places. So I'm taking my soldering iron and I'm gonna take the 2 wires that go to the switch. So there's a black wire that goes from the switch to the battery. So I'm just heating up on the battery connector until that wire comes loose. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 hands here. Okay, so we've got 1 loose. And then the other one is on the motor. Get my wire out of the way. I'm just heating up the solder that's on the motor connector until that wire comes right off. Okay. Now, these 2 wires, they come from the switch. They're going to go onto my jack. You gotta make sure they're nice and clean. I'm actually going to cut them and strip them again. No, I'm not, because I don't have strippers. My wire strippers don't go small enough, so I'm gonna get this solder off of here. I have these to hold my jack. There's a little ring on here. I'm going to take it off just so I can get a better grip on the jack. That ring's going to hold it in place when we put it in the hole. This in place here. And then I have 2 more wires. So we're adding in these 2 new wires that are gonna go from our switch jack, and one will go to the battery connector where we removed the other wire, and one will go, oops, I pointed at the wrong one, the battery connector, and the other one will go to the motor where we removed that wire. So I'm putting, and on these jacks, we want the outside 2 connectors. So the one that's in the middle, we're not going to use that at all because we have 3 connectors. If you only have 2, then you just use the 2. So I'm going to put one of our new wires and one of the old wires on one side and the same on the opposite side. So first I'm winding them together so we get a good connection. And then stick them in that hole. It's like threading a needle. There's one side. Okay, so now I have 2 wires going in on the left side and 2 wires going in on the right side, a red and a black to each side. Now I'm going to find my solder and my soldering iron. And keep the wires out of the way. And I'm going to solder both joints together. Then I've got to solder one of these onto the battery and one onto the motor. So the one that comes off, if I put the switch at the top, the one that's on the right side went to the motor, and the one that was on the left side went to the battery. Thought I could use the solder that was already there, but it's not working out. Let's get some new solder. This is where my free hands. Come here, Ryan. Come around this side. See if I can hold the solder at the joint so that I can melt it in there. And then our other one is at the battery. Okay, so there's the one at the battery. Oops. Now I'm going to, oh, here's my test switch. Okay, now I'm gonna test this really quick just to make sure that it works. So I have just a little test button that I can use. It's not the one that the students would be using, but just a test one. So I'm gonna very carefully plug it in here. And I have to put batteries in. Okay, so now when I hit the button, I can hear the motor is spinning. So that's working, that's great. And then I'm also going to reach under and hit the original button in the toy. And I hear the motor runs when I hit that too. So I know everything's working. So I'm good with the electrical part. Now it's time to move on to the mechanical part, putting that jack onto the device. Take the batteries back out and very carefully unplug the switch. And take this off of my helper. And then you can see just to the left of the switch on the toy is where I'm going to put the jack. So I'm kind of eyeballing that to see where it fits, so I know where to put my hole. Making sure that all my wires connect just fine. I have a drill with a 1/4 inch bit on it. I have a heavy duty piece of cardboard here so I can stop drilling into my table. And you want to be really careful that you don't drill any of your wires too. And be careful, the drills like to run away a little bit on the plastic until they get a good grip. should have charged the battery before I did that. Get all the saw shavings out of there, the drill shavings. And then I can stick the jack through the hole. Some better lighting in here. There we go. So we've got the jack, and then there's the little nut that goes on it. Sorry, dropping everything. This little nut goes in there. If you have needle nose pliers, you can tighten it down a little bit more with the pliers. Not too tight because you don't want to crack the plastic. Now I'm double checking to make sure all my wires are still in place. They look really good. Then I'm gonna put this back together. The 3 places where the screws go in, they kind of fit just right in there, and there's a little tab that has to fit in a slot, so then you know you have all the pieces back together the correct way. Then I'm going to find my 3 screws, put those in. Put my batteries back in. Battery compartment. Put my dice in there. And the dome. Try out the button that's originally worked. That's working okay. Then I try out this button. Plugged into my new jack. Hit the button. It works. That's all there is to it. Now make sure that all the dust and all that stuff is off of it, that it's cleaned up real nice, and put it back into the original packaging so that we can give students a package that looks like a real toy that we would have pulled off the shelf at the toy store, and they'll be ready to go. Thank you so much for doing this, and have fun. Enjoy it.